the start, committed to each other by His works and from our heart. We would be a family in a house that will be our home, and with faith we'll build it strong. We'll build a house full of faith, and together we can make. And when the strong winds blow, it won't fall down. As one in Him we'll grow, and the whole world will know we are a household of faith.
Now to be a family, we've got to love each other at any cost, unselfishly. And our home must be a place that fully abounds with grace, a reflection of His face.
We'll build a household of faith, and together we can make. And when the strong winds blow, it won't fall down. As one in Him we'll grow, and the whole world will know we are a household of faith. We'll build a household of faith, and together we can make. And when the strong winds blow, it won't fall down. As one in Him we'll grow, and the whole world will know we are a household of faith.
Good evening and happy Sabbath, beloved brethren. And I would like to thank Ike for requesting Ted and Ayet to sing tonight. I requested Ike last week to sing. I don't know. But I'm always blessed whenever I hear Ted and Ayet sing. Amen? I know that's your feeling too. And particularly, I am very thankful for them to have sung the song, Household of Faith. Household of Faith. And if you have noticed, there is this phrase that says, we will be a family, a house that will be a home. And with faith will it be strong. We'll build a household of faith, and together we can make. And when the strong winds blow, it won't fall down. As one in Him will grow, and the whole world will know that we are the household of faith. We are the household of faith. Last week, I was reminded that for these Vespers, the women's ministry will lead the program. I invited a speaker, but the other day she called and told me that she's not available. But anyway, even if she has not called me yet, I was already anticipating that if she does not respond, then I will try to study with you something that is what I think is useful for the family, because that is the favorite topic of women, family. And what about the family? I thought of a topic that could be very connected with the family. And when you think about family, you think about love, right? And especially that this is the month of February, and this is the month of love. In fact, tomorrow night, I would like to remind you that we have a banquet, a celebration of love. Well, love is a very broad topic. And the time is endless when we talk about love. But tonight, I'm not really sure where are we going through this study, but one particular thing that is a concern of me is when we talk about love, it seems to imply that love is coming from the heart. So, I am kind of like, really? When I was young, I always hear my father tell my older brothers and sisters, like, when you fall in love, do not use your heart. Have you heard about that? Utok ang gamiton. Use your brain. So that tonight, I kind of entitle our study, Love with all your heart, with your brain, or with your mind? Which? So, well, I just try to explore this study by myself because I like to answer that to myself too. Okay. So the question why? The question is why? You know, a lot of our kids, some of our kids or some people, there are people who always ask why? Why should we fall in love? Why? Okay, so I have always been curious about this. And then when I became an Adventist, that was when I was first year college, about 40 years ago. I was 16. And then I started to read the Bible more than when I was a Catholic. And then I discovered that sorry, but my computer is not working. Okay. I discovered that when I was reading the Bible, the Lord Himself is commanding us to love. So, and by the way, so when I decided that I should talk about love, because this is the month of love. And then I look at my Andrew's Bible and look at the concordance and was looking for the word love. And lo and behold, I saw there 77 references on the word love. And that alone is excluding the cross references and the word beloved and or loveth. Just the word love. I said, oh my, too long. But I just chose two text. Because this text, let me read. If you want to read it yourself in your seats, you can find the Bible there. And it says in Deuteronomy 6:5, "And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might." Take note, it mentioned about loving God with all your heart, with all your mind, or with all your soul, and with all your might. Perplexing, right? It's puzzling. And in Matthew 22:37, Jesus said unto him, this pertaining to the lawyer who was asking him about what is the greatest commandment. And Jesus said unto him, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might." So again, it's kind of like loving with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your might. Well, some other texts about love, it mentioned about the mind. But anyway, I just focus on these two. So, God Himself wanted us to love. Well, it also mentioned about loving your enemies, loving mercy, loving righteousness, loving kindness. But in 1 John 4:8, it mentioned about God is love. And also in John 14:15, it mentioned about, if you love me, keep my commandments. So there's so many implications now of what really love is. As what we understand, that love is kind of like an emotion. And so, the reason why we study love, why? Because love is important. Love is important. Is it really important? Do you really consider it important? Now tonight, I just would like to revolve around the questions on, I have started with why we should love, because God Himself commanded us to love, and it is important. And then there's the question about how to love. How do we love? Do we really ponder about this question? How do we love? And what authorities or what people say about love? And what if I have my own way of loving, or what if I don't love? So we'll just proceed with focusing on these questions as we study about this tonight. And later on, we will try to see what really is the point that we are going to. Particularly, I'd like to emphasize that loving is learned when we are children. Do you agree on that? That loving is not only the affair of adults, but it has to be learned when they are young. Do you agree? Yes or no? Okay, yes. Now, because God commanded us to love, because He is love Himself. 1 John 4:8. Now, the question now is, what is love? What is love? What do you really understand about love? People, there's a type of people who just want to ask what. What? They are particular about what the Bible say about. So tonight, the question, what about love? Let me read to you, since we know what God says about love, that He says that He is love, so there's no question about it. the essence about the existence of God, he said that He is love. He is love. And we all realize, we all know that God is love. But here's a definition by Mrs. White about love. He says in Adventist Home, page 50, that love is a precious gift which we receive from Jesus. It is a pure and holy affection. And listen to this. She says that it is not a feeling, but a principle. So now there's another facet of what love is. Love is a principle. And those that are actuated by true love, listen, young people, those that are actuated by true love are neither unreasonable nor blind. Well, we've been hearing about love is not blind. As a principle, love is not unreasonable. Okay. But all of us, especially those who are married, experience that when we are in love, there's something strange that we feel, right? I don't know, maybe Edna and Roland, probably they were singing this together about the song like, there's a song that, it says, I hear singing, but there's no one there. I smell blossom, but the trees are bare. Something like that. All day long I seem to walk on air. I wonder why. But the end says like, you're just in love. And you have that feeling. You're not sick, but you're just in love. So, people equate like when you are in love, there seems to be like a feeling. That's why our topic is like, is it from the heart? Is love a feeling from the heart? Okay, let's move on. We have here a surgeon, and we have doctors here in the church. But I was reading an anatomy book, and I was trying to look for the function of the heart. Is it really something that feels or something that is involved with this nice feeling about love? But what I can tell you, the summary of the function of the heart does not speak about any cognitive processes such as feeling or thinking, but anatomy books, physiology books tells that the function of the heart is only to pump blood, to pump blood and to circulate it throughout our body. The oxygenated blood from the heart, from the right ventricle, goes to the lungs to receive oxygen. Then it goes back to the right auricle and to the left ventricle to have a big push by the aorta to be circulated throughout the whole body. And it goes on and on for a day, 3 times that it circulates throughout our whole body. And that's the only function of the heart. So I was still puzzled. I said, oh, okay. So the heart does not have anything to do about our emotions, but it only pumps blood, or else we'll die if we don't receive blood. Okay, so that's it. The main function of the heart is to pump blood around the body. The deoxygenated blood becomes oxygenated in the lungs and then back to the heart to be distributed to the whole body. Now, so what else should be involved in loving? Now, I look at the human brain. Okay, look at this human brain. Book says that the essence of being human is because we have a human brain. We do not have the brain of the mice that you can see there, but You know, a lot of people says that your intelligence is based on the size of the brain. But no, book says that for now, it has no association. No matter how big is your head or how small is your head, the size of our head does not matter in connection to our intelligence. Just like, you know, the elephant, the whales, they have bigger brain than us, but they don't think like us. And then the horse, the brain of the horse is smaller than us, but you can notice that when the baby horse is born, in 45 minutes, she learns to walk. Not like us. The average is we start crawling and then we walk at about 12 months or maybe 10 months. Okay, so the Bible says that we have different brain because God created us in His image. That's good. Okay. You know, unlike before, recently there are so many discoveries about the brain. Why? Previously, the authorities, the doctors, the anatomists, they just studied the brain with comparing it with the study of the brain of the mice because it's closely resembles to our brain. But then, and also by the way, before they were studying the brain through autopsy. Do you know what is autopsy? When a person dies, then they open up the organs that they are interested to, and like the brain. They want to see what is wrong with the brain. So when you have a stroke, they could see, they will conduct an autopsy, and then they will see what's going on in the brain. But then, you know, technology, it's really amazing how technology, modern technology has given us new discoveries. And that's why we now can learn more of the brain. By the way, some of you here are in the healthcare profession. You are very familiar with the PET scan, you know? The PET scan, it's a way of, like if you have epilepsy or if you have brain tumor, the PET scan, they'll put some, it's a way to know. By the way, PET means positron emission tomography, and they can locate the tumor or cancer in the brain by injecting or maybe in an IV putting some radioactive materials, and it will trace where the tumor is or the problem is. But then it has some radiation. So it's not very much advisable for us to use. But nowadays, most recently, we have the functional MRI or magnetic resonance imaging. And we have another one, the electrocephalography. The fMRI does not use radioactive materials anymore. It's very safe. And then, it does not examine the dead, but living subjects. They will just use the MRI and they could, you know, they could distinguish through its radioactive firing. Okay, so let me show you an example here. Okay, by the way, as I have said, because of this technology, we know a lot more of the brain. And in fact, through this MRI and all this, we can know that our brain is wet. It's a jelly-like mass. And this reminds us that we should drink water, adequate water every day, or else our brain will become dry and it's damaged. And by the way, the brain is like a size of a small grapefruit. about 3 pounds, weighing 3 pounds. And it consists of 100 billion neurons. And 2% of our, which is 2% of our body, okay, the 3 pounds size of our brain is 2% of our body weight, approximately, but the brain consumes 20% of our food intake. So this reminds our mothers that we should prepare food for breakfast for our kids before going to school, because it affects their learning once their brain is not fed the right food in the morning. It's really important, not only for our kids, but for us. We should have adequate food so our brain will function effectively. And then we can see here, I have mentioned about how many neurons? 100 billion neurons, and this is a neuron magnified. You see, our brain is composed of these 200 billion neurons, and this is an example of the neuron. Now, okay, as early as in the middle school or maybe high school, we were already exposed to the rough function of our brain. So we can see here that this part, so we, through this MRI and all this technology, they developed this brain mapping. So this part here that you can see, by the way, when we remove our skull, we can see our brain. And it's wrinkled, just as it looks there. So this part here is the frontal lobe. And by the way, I'd like to tell you that the frontal lobe is the so-called executive part of our body, of our brain. Because this part here, the frontal lobe, is the decision maker, is the personality, is the it's the CEO of our body. It is the command control, the control of all the command in our body. Now we are trying to delve into how it is the center of the will. But mind you, according to the recent study, this part of our brain, the frontal lobe, is not developed till the person is in the young adult age, about 25, 26 years old. And that's why I'd like to, at this point, remind mothers how that we are too exacting sometimes with our adolescent children or young children, but according to neuroscientists, that this part of the brain that can make rational decisions is not mature until the age of 26, and that is the threshold of young adult. What does it mean when we say fully developed? Is that the myelination? You have seen the neuron a while ago that transmit the impulses? The neuron is to be covered by myelin sheath to be fully completed or to be fully functional. But as I have mentioned, this part of the brain that is involved with high critical thinking is not developed until the age of 26. Now let's proceed. Well, I'm just emphasizing this part here, but this part here, the occipital lobe, is in charge for vision. And the cerebellum here contains most of the neurons because it is responsible for the balance, for motor coordination of the body. This part here is more on hearing, auditory processes. And this part here is more of parietal lobe. It's more of well, it's also a part of orientation, spatial orientation, or recognition and calculation. But, well, I will not dwell on this so much. By the way, before I'll go to the emotional part, okay, one thing that is very significant with this, the left brain, by the way, we have two hemispheres. This part of the neurons is controlling the right side of our body, and this right part of our head, right hemisphere, is controlling the left part of our body. And that's why when we have stroke, you will notice that if this part of the brain is damaged, then the mobility of the left part of the body is affected. But I just would like to mention here that language is in the left side of the brain. But the difference is there is another part in the right hemisphere for the women that is in charge of language. And that explains that women are more talkative than men. So they have discovered that while this is more focused on language development, there's a big part here, the Broca area, but there is another part here that for the women that is not present in the men. Okay. Now, but let me now focus on the emotional side of the brain, because this is very important for learning. Learning to love, learning to hate, learning to decide. Okay. I'd like to mention here that, okay, emotions is very important in learning. Unless you link learning process with emotions, learning is not permanent. How is this done? Let me show you. Inside our brain, okay, and in the inner part of our brain is the limbic system. Okay, a while ago we were talking about the outer part of our brain, the different lobes, but this part I'd like to mention to you, I'd like to give emphasis on this inner part. Okay? Well, we have the thalamus. Okay, you have heard about the thalamus. When our senses, you know, we hear, we see, we taste, we feel, that is sensory stimulus that comes into our brain. It is received by the thalamus. And the thalamus will coordinate to the different parts of our cerebrum, you know, the parietal lobe, the frontal lobe, and all those. What previous experience do we have with the present stimulus? And so he processes it. If it's something to do with the maintenance of balance in our body, like to survive, then he connects, the thalamus will connect with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is in charge for, like, for example, a person see a snake. So the thalamus says, it's a snake. Previous memory will tell you it's a snake. So a snake is dangerous. So it will tell the hypothalamus to, okay, squirt a chemical that will make the person run as fast as he can. And then, okay, squirt another chemical through the adrenal glands. Then you squirt like the stress hormone called adrenaline. And you know, when there is like fire, you can even lift a heavy thing. And that's because of the adrenaline squirted by the adrenals on top of your kidney. And by the way, this is how we feel. When we see something like a snake, then the thalamus will tell the hypothalamus, okay, this is dangerous. And so it will, as I have said, squirt all of those chemicals, neurotransmitters that is needed by the body to respond for survival. And by the way, that chemical will make your heart beat faster. See? So when you are in love, when you see the guy that you love, or maybe when you see the smile of the baby that you love, it will make your heart feel it. So when you're happy, the thalamus will tell the hypothalamus to squirt the so-called endorphins. Endorphins is a hormone or a chemical that's produced by the body. It's like a natural opium that heals or that relieves you with pain. So when you're happy, or by the way, let me tell you this, when you walk, it's the best exercise because the body will produce a lot of endorphins. So I'm inviting you, every Sunday the women are walking. Endorphins. So now we can see how the brain connects with the heart when there is an emotion. And one thing, emotions is processed in the amygdala. Okay, so you see there the amygdala is like an almond. In that amygdala part of the brain. And by the way, for mothers, this is fully developed. The amygdala is fully developed, fully covered with myelin sheath. The axons are fully covered with the myelin sheath so that it's fully working, the amygdala. And this is the area that focuses on emotional experiences. When I say fully developed, then it could respond. It could react. And according to brain scientists or neuroscientists, that learning to love, and we know that love encompasses everything, to respect, to trust, to learn higher thinking, or anything that we learn is love, is only effectively learned, it's effectively transferred when there is emotion linked with it. Emotion is the first, that emotional part of us in our brain is first developed because this is critical to responding to our survival. I don't know if you can, if you are with me, but why I emphasize on looking at this, because this is a teachable moment. The first 5 years of an infant, the mothers and the fathers are expected to take, not to take for granted, but to take this opportunity, the teachable moment of the child, to inculcate in them the lessons of love, the lessons of respect. And the concrete or the permanent memory in the brain is only impressed when there is a concrete experience or when there is doing. Teaching is never transferred unless the thing that you are teaching is demonstrated. There is no learning that takes place unless the thing is not experienced by the person learning himself. I don't know if you get it, but at this point, it's really important that when we express love, it's not only like talking about love, but it is something that is experienced to have a permanent impress in our heart. Now, there's also another part here, the hippocampus. Hippocampus. That part here consolidates. Okay, so it closely interact with the amygdala. The amygdala is the seat of emotion. The hippocampus consolidate because the hippocampus will coordinate what and try to screen out the meaning of the stimulus or the senses or anything, the information that comes to our brain. What is significant here is that when you express something to somebody, to your children, to your spouse, to the brethren, because we are a household of faith, it becomes significant only when there is meaning, when they have previous experience of what they are now, the information that they are now receiving. Now, what I would like to emphasize in this is our kids, we can never tell them to worship God unless early in their age, they've been already prepared. They've been already exposed to the concept of what we want them to become. Because there is strong connection in their previous experience to what they will be receiving. Okay, our kids, we experience it ourselves, you know. All that we are now, we could always relate of how our parents taught us at home. Do you agree? Our basis of who we are now goes back to our upbringing, to who we are at home. So, okay, I'd like to kind of connect now. Okay, here it says that the thalamus receives all the information, and ideally, the thalamus will, when they receive the, say, emotional stimulus, emotional message, the thalamus will try to send it to the cortex, you know, the executive part of our brain, but it is a long way. It's a delay because the thalamus has direct contact with the amygdala. So the first response is emotional. In every situation that we come in or we encounter, our first reaction is emotional. But then later on, in the long run, when we try to weigh things, we make decisions, we reflect about the thing, and that is the role of the cortex, and that is how we screened our emotions. Okay, this is just a model about how information goes to our brain, and then it just like when you look at the cell phone, immediately we can see the number of that phone, but then it disappears. The memory is only like 1 second. But the next is, if it's more meaningful, then it goes to short-term memory. Short-term memory goes there for like maybe 1 minute. But then if it does not have meaning, then it's just go away. But then if it connects to your previous experience, then it goes to the long-term memory and it will be used for the future. It's just like this model too. When we see things, our senses will fill us with the information. Then the table is like the working memory that we process, and it's in the thalamus. And then the long-term memory goes to different parts of our brain that is reserved for information that we will use to make important decisions. So in other words, we have this triad of learning. Now I could understand that in loving or in any emotion or in any decision, in anything that we do, it has something to do with the mental, the brain as an organ, but the mind includes all the experiences that is going on in the brain. That's the mind. And then the heart is more on how in layman's term we feel it in our heart, because the brain secretes chemicals that makes our heart beat faster or slower depending on the emotions that we receive. And then the body also is integrated. When we see a scary thing, we run, or so we react. Our body is integrated by the brain. Now, what I would like to emphasize here is many of us, especially mothers, we take things for granted. Remember that learning takes place. The most teachable moment is the first 5 years in a person's life. And sometimes we take things for granted. I could see a lot of kids. There's so many things that could be done so that the first 5 years, which is the foundation of all learning for a child, for a person, could be enriched. Because a lot of studies that are done, that when there is rich environment during the first 5 years of life, then the person is more ready to go to school, the person is more ready to get involved in the church, the person is more ready to go out in the real world. When the first 5 years is stopped by the parents to enrich the development of the brain. And a lot of things can be done, the way we eat. You know, I have read a while ago that a lot of foods like contains a lot of chemicals that damage our brain as early as, especially during the fast development, during the first 5 years of life, and the emotional development is also fixed, is very, very prominent between the age from 3 to 11 or 12. And this is the puberty period where our young people had a lot of chemicals or hormones that is being produced by the body, and they become so tired, they become so confused. And remember that their brain is not, their cortex, that part of their brain that makes important decisions, are not developed yet. So just like this, when a person is frustrated, the heart, the beating of the heart is erratic. But when the person receives appreciation, then there is like harmonious beating that we can see in the heart. Just like this, you know? When there is love, when there is happiness, you can see here that in the animals, the body of the mother produces a chemical pheromones that attaches, that creates bonding with the child. Now, just like the human being, we produce oxytocin that creates bonding between the mothers and the children. And that is a very, a moment that is very conducive for bonding. So what I would like to say here is, when a child is free to be herself at home, just like us, when we were free, when we are accepted at home, when we are appreciated, when our self-concept is good, then we can act out. We can do great things because we are being recognized and we are being appreciated. Because all our reactions to anything that bombards us is dependent on how we look at ourselves. If we look at ourselves as being loved, being respected, then we respond positively to any situation. I think I have no more time. So anyway, so the question is, what if? If there's no love, there's so many problems that comes. And you will notice that in our individual homes, when we cannot respect each other, when we cannot forgive, when when there's no love, when we do not use our brain to do positive things, to do creative things, then there's so many problems. I could have cited a lot of examples about how problems come when there is no love, when we do not use our brain positively, our heart. We do not follow God's command to love, but then we don't have time. But anyway, it says here in Education, page 16 to 18, higher than the highest human thought can reach is God's ideal for his children. Godliness and godlikeness is the goal to be reached. So, parents, especially mothers, many times we are so confronted with so many activities that we need to do at home, cleaning, cooking, that we fail to give attention to our children, that we fail to give attention to our spouses, that we fail to give attention to ourselves. On that direction, that we need to develop love, and love encompasses everything. But our goal is, when doing anything, our goal is godlikeness and godliness. So to conclude, faith is knowing that life is a journey, that every moment is precious. We cannot take it for granted. And we could be of positive influence to each other, to our spouse, to our kids, to our brethren, because we are a household of faith. And that we live and is learning to love. That's our responsibility. That should concern us. And hope for a bright tomorrow. And we can only do this, the loving thing, through the wonderful realization of how God wonderfully made us. And we can only do this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen? So now we listen to another song about love.
Receive also our offering.
If home is really where the heart is, and home must be a place we all can share, for even with our differences, our hearts are much the same. For where love is, we come together there. Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming, we can live together there. Love will be our home.
Wherever there are children singing, where a tender heart is beating, we can live together there. Love will be our home. With love, our hearts can be a family, and hope can bring this family face to face. And though we may be far apart, our hearts can be as one, when love brings us together in one place.
Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming,
We can live together there. Love will be our home. Where there are words of kindness spoken, where a vow is never broken. We can live together there. Love will be our home.
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 Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming,
We can live together there. Love will be our home. Where there are words of kindness spoken, where a vow is never broken. We can live together there. Love will be our home.
love will be our home.
Love will be our home. Love will be our home. Love will be our home.
Wherever there is laughter ringing,
Someone smiling, someone dreaming. We can live together there. Love will be our home. Love will be our
Thank you for that song. Beautiful song. To close, our closing song would be given by a loving couple in our church. We have Pastor and Mrs. Israel. They will also sing another love song.